In today's video, we're back with some updated NHL trade rumors. We're looking at the Chicago Blackhawks today, along with the Nashville Predators, the Dallas Stars, and the Carolina Hurricanes. And that's coming up next. Welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some more new updated information on some more NHL trades that we might potentially see here in the short term. And I want to get started with the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, we've talked about them a few times here in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, they have some more moves they might be making. They've been a fairly active team so far in this offseason, and many believe that they're not quite done here. And if nothing else, they very well might try to free up some cap space or address other needs of their team by moving some guys around. And that certainly includes a forward like Artemi Anisimov, who we've talked about before. But Hawks insider Jay Zawaski indicates here that Anisimov is not the only forward that they're currently shopping, that they've also been considering moving forward Brendan Perlini, who's currently a restricted free agent and needs a new contract for this coming season. Obviously, Perlini was acquired in that trade with Arizona that brought them Dylan Strome. Obviously, Strome has worked out pretty nicely so far. But with the abundance of young forwards that they have now, it's looking like Perlini might possibly be moved if they can find the right trade here. Obviously, they've already addressed some of their needs on the back end. They brought in some defensemen like Ali Mata, Calvin DeHaan. They got Robin Leonard as a goaltender through free agency, so they're pretty stacked in the goaltending department between Leonard and Corey Crawford and Colin Delia. So more than likely here, if they do anything else, they're likely going to try to free up some cap space, maybe acquire some future assets, for example, or maybe bring in another younger forward who might be able to play in their minor league system for a little while first here before they come up to the NHL level. Of course, they wouldn't completely rule out bringing in a player who would be able to help immediately. But some of these moves will be made as much to free up some cap space and roster space here as well. So it's certainly debatable what the return would be. But in the past, Anisimov has been difficult to move because of a no-move clause. But no-move clause expired on July the 1st. Plus, he already had a signing bonus paid out as well. So moving Anisimov now would be much easier than it had been before. His contract isn't too bad. And of course, in Perlini's case, he's a restricted free agent, not going to command a lot of money, and he still potentially could have a bright future. Two guys might not prove to be too difficult to move, and it's quite difficult, like I said, exactly what the return might be. But there's plenty of teams out there looking for scoring. There's plenty of teams out there looking for a number 2, number 3 center iceman. So I don't think they're going to have too much trouble here, given the state of the contracts and the state of the player here. I mean, Anissimov's got good size, good on faceoffs, got a lot of experience now. So obviously, with the contract he has for the next couple of years, it's fairly low risk, depending on the team or where they could slot him in their lineup. So I do fully suspect that the Blackhawks offseason moves are not yet complete, and these are a couple of the players that we very well might see moved out here in the short term. Now, the Dallas Stars are also shopping young defenseman Julius Honka, who's struggled to make a consistent impact here on the Stars lineup. Obviously, we saw the Stars acquire veteran defenseman Andre Sekera after he was bought out by the Edmonton Oilers and signed to a 1-year contract. Obviously, that takes up yet another roster spot and will make it even more challenging here on Honka to really gain any traction to get into the lineup here. Of course, the former first-round pick, like I said, has kind of struggled here in order to get his career well underway. He got surpassed by a youngster like Miro Heiskanen, who had a terrific rookie year last year. Of course, they got John Klingberg, their best defenseman as well. And like I said, after bringing in Sekera and some of the other defensemen they have, it's just going to be that much more tough. And it really looks as though the Stars feel might be in his best interest and theirs if they can try to find him a fresh start with another team. Kind of like what we saw in the trade just a few days ago between the Hawks and the Sabres, where they swapped prospects, although that trade was a little different, being that Yokoharu really wasn't struggling, at least didn't appear to be. I mean, they do have some other solid D prospects, like I said, like Mitchell and Boakfist, etc., but still a little bit questionable trade where they'd move him for Nylander, but I digress off of that. But maybe that's a similar type of trade where maybe some younger prospects that might be struggling could swap scenery and see if they can get their careers on track here. So if you take a look around the NHL, maybe see a team who might be willing to take a chance on a young defenseman like Honka and give him a shot here, then that very well might be where he ends up. Now, we've also had some information coming to the latest 31 Thoughts podcast from Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. They had an interview here with Nazem Kadri, of course, who was recently traded from the Maple Leafs to the Colorado Avalanche. And we had discussed the possibility before that there was a rumor that he was really traded to the Flames prior to that, but nixed the deal because of his no trade clause, that the Flames and the Leafs had a trade all worked out, which would have sent Connor Brown and Nazem Kadri over to the Flames. The return was believed to be TJ Brody and Mark Jankowski. I can't confirm that 100%, 100% because obviously the trade never actually happened, but that's what was speculated here. There could have been other pieces in there as well, but they did ask Kadri why he decided to block that trade. Obviously, the Colorado trade he could not do that with because they were not on his list of teams that he could block. But he just said it was no disrespect to the Calgary Flames organization at all. He really respects their team and sees the direction they're heading, and it seems like they have a bright future. But he really just wanted to stay in Toronto and figured if he said no and refused to waive his no trade, that maybe that would be increase the odds here that he would remain a Leaf and play as a Maple Leaf for the coming season and continue his career in Toronto. Obviously, he's from Ontario. He loves playing there and certainly did not want to leave. So it had nothing to do with going to Calgary. It just really had everything to do with staying, which really doesn't come as a surprise. That's why most of these players negotiate these things into their contracts. In the case of a player who's been there a long time and you know that they really love where they play, then it totally makes sense. But of course, he understands it's a business and knew they were up to something. And obviously, once that trade was blocked, he figured that they likely would continue to find other moves, and really I think this move turned out to be better for the Leafs anyway, at least in the short term. I mean, Tyson Barrie will certainly address that right shot defenseman that they so badly need, but they might prove to be difficult here beyond this year. Of course, in that trade, the Avalanche retained half of Barrie's salary, so it made it easy for them to work with the cap for this year. But then he's an unrestricted free agent, and there's many reports out there indicating that Tyson Barrie is going to be looking for around $8 million per year, even if it comes in around 7.5, something to that effect with the offense he can produce. That's going to prove very, very difficult for the Leafs to retain him beyond the coming season. Of course, we don't know where the Mitch Marner contract's going to come in yet, so it's going to be debatable longer term here. This very well might be the case of the Leafs trying to do their best to kind of go all in and win this year because they really don't know how much change the team could see again during the next offseason. So I guess we'll see here. But that's just some information from the 31 Thoughts podcast on a trade that almost happened between the Leafs and Calgary, which we did discuss before, but just confirmed by Kadri himself and discuss why he decided to make that move and block the trade. Now, we have some reports here as well concerning the Nashville Predators from The Athletic. Now, of course, we discussed the fact here many times that it looks as though Kyle Turris could be the odd man out after they sign Matt Duchene to a lucrative long-term contract. So, obviously, down the middle now they have Duchene. They have Ryan Johansson, who's making a lot of money. They have Kyle Turris, who's over $6 million. And then they also have Nick Bonino. So, it's a very expensive group of center icemen, which obviously center is a very important position. And you do have to be deep at that position to really stand a good chance to be successful and go deep in the playoffs and be a cup contender. So I do understand having that deep group of players there to go down the middle, but at the same time you have to look out for your entire team needs here, and the Predators are up against the cap, and so there's been numerous speculations that Turris himself would be the odd man out, but The Athletic did interview David Poile, and his remarks might seem to lead otherwise here, that maybe they're not going to be moving Kyle Turris, but at the same time, as I mentioned over and over again, when you hear interviews with GMs, they're not going to come out and tell you exactly what their plans are. They have to be strategic with their choice of words. They obviously want to make the players on their team seem more valuable, and that they don't want to move them to kind of drive their price tag up. So it's all strategy when it comes to interviews and what they say publicly. So always keep that in mind, as I've mentioned here numerous times. But Poile's remarks indicate that they're hoping Turris can have a bounce back season, and that they really feel that he could still be a very key member to their group of center icemen here, and that between Johansson, Duchene, and Turris likely going to the third line could really be good for the team overall. But he said they're up against the cap. They have lots of players signed long term, and that they obviously will always be looking to make moves to improve their club, but kind of shied away from the probability of trading Kyle Turris. But really, if you look at it, I think it's still likely that he could be moved. If not, maybe Bonino's the guy to go. But really, if you look at Turris making $6 million, he struggled mightily last year, so the contract's not looking good. I know Poile does not like to retain salary. I don't believe he's ever done it before. It probably would be preferable for them to kind of try to rehabilitate the player, get him playing better before they consider making that move. But if he ends up going down to the third line and playing with even less offensive players, I don't see his numbers struggling. Could push his value even lower and make the contract look even worse. So I guess we'll see how the Predators proceed here. Would not be surprised, though, to see them move a player to give them some cap flexibility. Kyle Turris does make a lot of sense. I realize it's not going to be the easiest to do, but I still wouldn't rule it out even with Poyle's comments here to The Athletic. There's plenty of teams out there looking for a center iceman, including their rival like the Winnipeg Jets. I'd be surprised to see a Preds-Jets trade, to be honest, although Kyle Turris in a way would be a good fit with Winnipeg here. Obviously, he'd be exactly what they're looking for up the middle to be that number 2, number 3 center iceman to kind of solidify their center iceman. But there's plenty of other teams out there in a similar situation, so I do think there's plenty of need for this type of player. So we'll see how the Preds proceed here with their offseason plan. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes may not be done yet here as well. Of course, we saw them sign Ryan Dzingel today. We've seen them make some other moves here, including acquiring Eric Haula from the Vegas Golden Knights earlier, so they've added a few forwards. They had to address their goaltending after having both their main goalies last year be unrestricted free agents. They were able to bring back Mrazek. They lost McElhinney, but made that deal with Florida to bring in James Reimer. So the goaltending tandem is a little bit different, but hopefully Reimer can play a little better and get back to being a solid backup goalie here to Mrazek. So with all the moves they've made, there's still many questioning that they may not be done. They never really did trade a right shot defenseman. Instead, we saw them trade Calvin DeHaan, which was a little bit of a surprise at the time, but they do have a lot of D-men back there, but they still have a lot that can play that right side, and it still wouldn't be completely ruled out that they could still do that, move a defenseman. They still have some young guys like Jake Bean and Hayden Fleury that really haven't gotten regular spots as of yet. I think Jake Bean had a terrific year in the American League last year. I think he's ready to step up and get more ice time. Same with Fleury. If the other guys making more money that are ahead of them on the depth chart are not the ones moved out, maybe one of them could be moved out to get more opportunity, because really they do have more than enough defensemen back there, and a guy like Justin Falk, for example, makes a lot of sense. He's in the last year of his contract. Extension talks apparently didn't go well, so it does make a lot of sense here that they might try to do that. But considering they've already added a few forwards through free agency and through trade already without moving in that defenseman, I'm not really sure that they have a whole lot of a need anymore at the forward position to really swap like a defenseman for a scoring forward. So I guess we'll see how they proceed here. There's also a big question mark around Justin Williams. Comments from GM Don Waddell basically leads us to think that Williams is leaning towards playing, and that if he does play, more than likely he would sign a short contract with Carolina. At least that's what many of us expect, but we don't have a firm decision yet from Justin Williams, so it's not quite clear if he will play or not. If he doesn't, they very well maybe could use a defenseman to trade to find another type of player who could come in and replace the type of offense that he brings. But if they get Williams back as well by already adding Dzingel and Haula, and they haven't really lost a whole lot outside of Michael Furlan, then there's really not a ton of room in that forward group, and they're slightly more offensive than they were last year. So really not really sure that the Canes can do a whole lot more that way, but many believe they're not quite done yet, and that we will see some activity, but a lot of that will depend if they move a defenseman and whether or not Justin Williams decides to play one more year with the Hurricanes. So that is all the latest NHL trade rumors here for today. Of course, as always, want to hear your thoughts, your opinions down in the comment section. Let me know what you think, what kind of trades we're going to end up seeing this summer. Are we going to have a very busy summer with lots of trade activity? I know there's still all kinds of RFAs that need to be signed, and a lot of that is holding things up from really opening up even further here. We're seeing a few little trades here and there, but once a lot of these RFA dominoes start to fall, I think we'll see more activity as teams have a better idea what their needs are going to be and what their salary cap situation will be moving forward. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you don't miss any future content. Of course, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up before you go as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.